I've got off Twitter, so if you want to find me on LinkedIn. And also I run a special education Facebook page. If you want to join that, I only mainly it's research based. Some people ask questions on there, but it's not really a lot of questions. I just post articles that I've found. I post anything that might be of interest to people, and other people, other moderators post. But you can ask questions about students with disabilities on it. We just haven't had many do that. So hopefully this works. Go. Oh, me. All right. So this is me. I've now become a leading teacher. This was when I immigrated from England in '88. And they're My Little Pony glasses, and I really loved them. The other kids didn't. I'm an inclusion outreach coach, so I do that part-time part of school, which is helping mainstream schools to develop tier one effective practices. I do my master's by research. I was diagnosed with autism when I was 8 years old. So that was a while ago. So it was initially an Asperger's diagnosis. I'm Anglo-Indian, culturally third generation. I'm an immigrant. I have lots of hats. I go to live music festivals over weekends to rejuvenate, and I'm also an outdoor enthusiast. So I just spent 3 days out surfing, kayaking, late sunset walks with the kids and the students from my school. So that's my other thing that I really am passionate about, is getting our students with disabilities out into the outdoors. It's something that they can access without a lot of money when they're older. Read, and I advocate for all students, but mainly my specialty students with intellectual disabilities. And I've been in special education since 2008. And I started out as an aide, then became a teacher, and now a leader at a school. And I managed us towards structured literacy. So I guess the first thing I like showing people is data and what happened when we actually introduced structured literacy into our school. So as you can see, before structured literacy, this was at the end of 2019, about more than 75% of our students were working in the Victorian curriculum levels of A to D. And now we have less than 25% at the end of 2023. We don't have a data set for the end of 2024. I'm hoping this term we'll be able to have a new data set. So the first thing I want to talk about is the 4 phases of word reading and spelling. And this is by Linnea Erie, because I feel like this is probably the most important thing that teachers need to understand when it comes to students with disability, because this movement between those 4 phases is how our students do develop this reading and spelling knowledge. But a lot of our students are starting in this space of this pre-alphabetic, which is quite normal for, I guess, mainstream schools, where they come in with this pre-alphabetic preschool knowledge. But some of our students in special education might sit in this space for years. And so just because they're in there doesn't mean that they're not going to get out of it. A lot of us, and this part of the consolidated alphabetic stage is actually quite tricky to get to, because that's where all your polysyllabic, multisyllabic words come in, your morphology comes in, and we don't have many students in this space at the moment. We probably have, I think, 4, and we've been running this phonics program since 2022. So it's just something to consider when you're thinking about students with complex needs. The first thing that we need, though, is a whole school phonics program. If we don't have a whole school phonics program and we don't have that structure across the school, then we're never going to be able to fully target all that learning and growth across the school. So for schools that are doing it only for the first 3 years, from prep to grade 2, our students with disabilities need this for a long time. So they're still in this stage for years. And they might be I mean, if you're primary school, you might have students that really don't come out of a phonics program right through their schooling in primary school. We have students that are currently sitting in stage 7, and stage 7 for we use little learners is one of the tricky ones because your vowel digraphs come in, and it doesn't mean that we don't do it. And I think the whole point of this talk is going to be around that doesn't mean that just because it's taking them a long time that we don't do it or we don't carry it on. So we have teenagers up to the age of about 15, 16 who are still accessing this program, and teenagers that have gone into our senior secondary program where we don't do structured phonics. We still have some of them, because they're late learners in this space, we still have some of them accessing our tutor learning initiative, so our tutor on site at least 3 days a week to try to keep this momentum going. So this is how we structure it. It's quite structured. The different groups know what they're doing. Different teachers will run the different stages. So for stage 1 and 2, if they're in that first 2 years, they use the Milo Birthday Activities and Teacher Resource Book for little learners because it is a high engagement program, and it uses mnemonics, which is really important for our students to get the children to start understanding sounds and attributing the sound to the grapheme. Our pre-alphabetic stage is for our students who are not quite there. So the aim of the pre-alphabetic stage, and this is aligned to Linnea Erie's work, is to get them started in that interest. And we have a lot of students that come to our school in prep that they're still struggling with engagement and still struggling to sit down for a period of time, very up and down, very movement based. And so this is that sound boxes, which is what we use, is the first real thing where we're trying to engage them through a multisensory program. So we will have Play-Doh so they can make the letters with the Play-Doh. We have rice trays, we have shaving cream, colouring. We use the Milo's Birthday Activities letter sounds sheets like Milo Monkey, and they have to make the M. We have initial first sound stuff, and this is the only time we really use the initial first sounds, is to try to get them to attribute that sounds are in words. And we keep them in this program either that they're sitting and able to engage to move into the structured literacy part, or until they know those sounds. So as soon as the students are able to write the first 8 sounds and sound out the first 8 sounds through a flashcard system, then we will move them into that structured literacy program. So it's a really nice, engaging and supportive way that we can move our students through. We only do the first 8 sounds because the theory is that if they can do the 8 and then they move into stage 1, that they're going to have a lot of exposure in stage 1 to learning the sounds and consolidating it through manipulating the sounds, blending the sounds, and segmenting the sounds. So I guess pre-alphabetic is really initial sounds, and then stage 1 is where we do that real hard stuff of blending, manipulating, and segmenting. So that's that first stage. And then as you'll see, hopefully it'll work. Nope. We move through. So what we have after phonics stage, and some of our students are in groups after phonics. And then as we move through, this is to remind the teachers that we need to do all the sounds all the time. And the sound swap game from little learners is really good for phonemic manipulation, and also we use Sounds Right. So our teachers are Sounds Right trained and little learners trained. And we use a combination of 2 programs to help our students with disabilities. So the first part is nutting out what needs to be in the program. So we run our phonics across the school, across 9 classrooms, 45 minutes, 4 days a week. We have I think 60, maybe 56 students or maybe 60 students accessing this structured phonics program. That's across those classrooms. And we have maybe 4 or 5 students that are in stages 1 to about 5 that are actually just needing regulation support throughout, which means they go out for a bit, come back in, go out. But the majority of our students are sitting and learning for that 45 minutes in at school. It is the most calm and settled part of our day. The students really enjoy it because it's very repetitive and they know what they're going to access and they know what they're going to do. So this is the way we structure it. So everyone knows what they're doing in the different stages. So the teachers know, so then the students know, but also teachers might move termly to different groups. And we stream our kids for phonics. It is the only time we stream our students. And because it is such a discrete skill, we found that we couldn't really teach across a whole classroom because we'd have some students maybe sitting in stage 7 and some students sitting in stage 1 in one classroom setting. So we moved to this streaming and they transition really well because they know where they're going. Everything's set out. The teachers are really super organized. So that's the backbone of a good phonics program is to have all your structures in place, all your routines in place, and the teachers really need to understand what they're doing. So I expect that if I go into a classroom, is that one of these things is happening. We've banned any resources that aren't a part of whatever is on this list, and Twinkle is a big no-no. So if you're using Twinkle, there are lots of different things. And Rupert's program, we're trialing Rupert's program, the Spellcaster program, with a couple of our classes, and the students really love it. It's a really engaging program for the students, and Rupert's fantastic. If you ever find any bugs or anything going on and you email him, my teacher that talks to Rupert, she says he's great at fixing things. So for students with complex disabilities, we're talking about students that have severe physical disabilities. We have pre-phonics, and as I said, the sensory, but only until students know the GPCs of stage 1. We have the rice tubs, the Play-Doh, I skipped ahead, shaving cream, the toys with the initial sound, materials that are used in the SSP program. So we use the Milo's monkey to get the students familiar with it. And we also do the tracing of the letters through that. And we only focus on sound. So the students, there's a bit of debate around whether we should be teaching letter names or sounds. The majority of research, regardless of whether it's for disabilities or not, says to teach the sounds. So I can walk into lots of classrooms and the students are using the sounds. When they use the letter names, it tends to be through their learning their own name. So when we're teaching them their own name, we teach them the letter names off their names and off their friends' names. So they're kind of getting that letter name instruction incidentally, but we don't actually test it. And what we found is over time, the students get it. And if they're listening to the ABC song or anything like that, we don't need to be doing that so explicitly as what we probably were doing before, as they are picking it up. So for our students that are have really complex disabilities and low oral language, maybe it's receptive language or expressive language, we will put the cards of the words that they're making alongside it. And that's like PIT. So PIT is at the bottom here. And, you know, some students might not know what PIT is. So we actually have to show them the meaning or what it looks like for them to be able to store it in their memory as well. So this is very, very early phonics. We've found that we've actually had to use this less now because we have such a strong mentor text program in place, and that has picked up a lot of the oral language support. But initially, for some of our students, we were using these cards so we could put the card there as well as what they were making the word. If you want to know, I'm just going to do a plug because I actually did a full PD on what it looks like, I guess, in the classroom, what the phonics looks like in the classroom, and that's with Think Forward educators, because I've set up a group, special education groups through sorry, I'm tired, through Think Forward educators. So if you want to see how it looks in the classroom, I've did it through PowerPoint there. So I'm not going to go into much detail in case you've already seen it. But this is purely, I guess, giving you the structures around students with disabilities and what they may need a bit more than what a phonics program might give you. So that's different examples. There's the SIP down the bottom, and then there's the characters that are part of Little Learners. So we just make these up as, I guess, aided language displays as what we would use in special schools, where you just make it up and then the pictures are there. We can also use it alongside words that we're getting the students to spell if we need that visual support. Our students need a lot of visual support. And there's another example. So some are Little Learners, some are just pictures I have found off the internet. The other adjustments that we use are, this is a sound swap word game that this is what started out our phonemic manipulation. And part of us and our structures is that every day, no matter what stage they're at, they have to do this phonemic manipulation, and that's to support orthographic mapping. Our students are naturally going to orthographically map. Some do, some just ace it when they work out the code. And then other students need a lot of support to be able to orthographically map the words. And this is, I call this the visual representation of what the brain does when it orthographically maps in the brain. And that is removing one sound at a time and making a new word. And so our students use this as a really high support for them to learn their spelling, for them to also understand that when you remove one letter, which is one sound, it actually changes the word, it actually changes the meaning of the word. And we've noticed that our spelling has those extra letters that kids add in, or the extra sounds, or the sounds that they think are in, that's actually been reduced through using phonemic manipulation activities. And how we do that is, if you don't have, we photocopy these for each student, which are probably not meant to, but we buy a lot of these games. And then we also, sorry, Maureen, if you're listening. And we also use magnetic letters, any magnetic letters that you buy anywhere. So there's some students use those as well. We started off using these, and now we've moved to this more of this format. And this is what it looks like. So because we need lots of structures and routines for our students, and these are for students who can write. And it doesn't matter for us whether they write with a fist grip or they write with a tripod grip. We get them writing really, really early on. If you look on LinkedIn, I've shared photos, or even follow our Facebook school site. There's photos of the preps about 2 weeks ago starting to already form letters, some of their first sounds, without any supports, and just being able to write. So we do this really, really intensively. But when the students move into making the words, this is what it looks like in front of them. So they'll have a whiteboard, they'll have their whiteboard text up, a wipe of some sort, either a eraser or this. And then when the teacher says one of the words, so if they say sit, then the students will go it, and they'll bring down each sound. And then it's probably the easiest way to get so many repetitions in, because they'll bring it down and they'll say the sounds, and then they'll read it. So it'll be it, sit, and then they write it underneath. So it, sit. So in that, you've got many repetitions, and they might go through about 20 words in a lesson. So you've got those multiple repetitions for each word plus about 20 words, and it's quite quick. We move them quickly because we find that if we don't move quickly enough, and that's different depending on where the students are at, but sometimes if it's too slow, that's when we get a lot of I guess, dysregulation. Whereas when we're moving them quickly, the students having to keep up and we just keep going, we found that it's taken away a lot of that boredom. And I feel that sometimes for students with disability, some of their behaviors is due to not because they don't quite understand it, it's because sometimes we're just going too slow. And different classrooms will have different pace, but majority of them are quite quick. And we do get through at least 20 words in this session. We do extensive handwriting practice. So part of the 45 minutes is handwriting practice, phoneme manipulation. If they're up to it, dictation. They might play a game at the end if they have time, which is the games that I had in the original sheet. Is the teachers choose from that game sheet. And then they do a daily review of the sounds as well. So we cram a lot into that 45 minutes, but because we keep changing it, our students are able to be engaged for that 45 minutes. If they just sat and did one thing for a long time, they would get, I think, bored, and that would cause a bit of dysregulation. So within that, they could be doing 4 to 5 activities within that 45 minutes. And that has really set the pace and also set the structures and set the calmness of our classrooms. Different students will have different needs. Some have a big font, some have a littler font, and once they get out of this font, they go into tracing. We always use tracing. I want to cut down as much cognitive load as possible for our students, and tracing seems to be the easiest way to do that. It allows them to form the letters without them having to think for the letters. And I'm trying to use muscle memory for them to understand it, because that's how we write. We write through muscle memory, and we know how our hand's going to move because we know it. So I'm kind of fabricating this muscle memory for them to do it all the time. So every classroom would be doing, every group of phonics will be doing handwriting practice every day. And then they do some handwriting in their own classroom as well, especially in the junior years where they learn to write their name. Eventually, that even when they do have good handwriting, we still get them to trace. And our kids' handwriting is legible. Whenever they do any writing, you mostly make out, like, we have more students that we understand what they wrote rather than not at this point in time. You can use also the Little Learners handwriting sheets, which I just didn't put up here. So we use those as well. And the bubble writing is really good for those students who get really stressed about going off the line and have those perfectionist tendencies. And the bubble writing helps them stay in that space, and they're not so stressed about coming off the line, that they actually learn their letters better and quicker than giving them something like this straight. We use the print. We don't use cursive at our school. We find that cursive is way too hard for our students with disability. So all of our handwriting and everything is mainly stick and ball print. It's not fancy print. Some students love experimenting. So some students have taken it upon themselves to do a bit of cursive, but mostly it is print. The key crux of all of this is that our students need extensive practice and repetition. And it is practice, repetition, practice, repetition, practice, repetition. And some of our students are still in stage 1 after 2 years and 3 years. And we keep them there because we've seen over time that knowing a a little bit of sounds and knowing to read, even stage one decodable readers, they are still happier than before. And our well-being of our students has actually increased. We have less incidences that are well-being related. We have only, I think, 2 students that might be on a behaviour support plan. We haven't had a crisis or an IRA, like we haven't had a crisis plan for, I think, since last year. And everything has really improved since our students have learnt to read. And whether or not they get out of stage one is not really our worry, I guess. And I really want to emphasize that once you have the good structures in place and you have good instructional practice and you know the staff are doing it well and you know your teachers are doing it well and you know that there is a through line across the school, then we know that we're doing the right thing. I look into research and then I'll tweak things if it needs to be tweaked. But at the moment, what we found works is those key components of dictation, handwriting practice, phoneme manipulation, um, daily reviews, and the reading games, and plus decodable readers where they read those in the classroom. And with those 5, 6 elements, we know that we're doing everything right. And so we don't put pressure on the students to get to a certain point, and nor do we put pressures on the teachers for our students to move, because we know after doing this for so many years that our students move at their pace. It is not harmful for them. They enjoy the structures and routines of staying in phonics. And so we just keep going with them. And what we find is it's like a little light bulb goes off. And when that light bulb goes off, they might move a couple of stages and then they might sit a bit and then they might move. And so we don't have any, it's very different, I guess, from mainstream, is that we don't have an end goal. Their end goal is up to them because we know that we've put everything in place for them. And I've seen, and I know some people want to push it out, but we still have to acknowledge that our students have disabilities and we actually don't know how the brain works. We know that we're more similar than different, but we don't know all the time about where those differences occur. So just this is the best thing. Our students are so much happier. Our parents have said that even if they aren't reading a lot, the fact that they're reading a little bit is great. The fact that they can go into the supermarket and they're attempting to read words now is incredible. And when I was with the seniors today, we went to the Cape Otway Lighthouse, and, you know, some of the students that previously weren't attempting to read any of the signs walking around were actually stopping to read, you know, the signs about the history of the place. And so we can help them out. But the fact that they actually stop to do that has been life-changing for our students, for them to think that they can. So that's, I guess, what drives this for us as a school, is to say this is better than what it was before, where we weren't teaching this explicitly. They need a lot of time. We've had students that understand stage 1 and then they just, you know, within 6 months they've gone through and they're reading picture books and things like that, or a year, and they're at the end of it, they've just worked out that there's a code. And then we've had other students who, you know, have been doing this for 3 years and they're at stage 3, but they're still happy. And they really, the well-being is just incredible to allow our students to do this. So engagement-wise, I touched on this a bit before. We use the Milo's Monkey birthday surprise and the characters in the book, and we do the art activities. Our students love the characters and they love hearing the story of the book, the Milo's Monkey's birthday surprise. And that's only our junior year. So we say the first 2 years of their schooling, because it is quite babyish, I guess, for teenagers. We still use a lot of their resources. We just don't use that book for for our older students, but it is a good starting point when you have preps in. I recommend this program to any special school who comes and talks to me, and we don't get any kickback, and we're not invested in it. We don't have shares. So I just think that it's fantastic for our students. We use the sound boxes for stage 1 only, and then we move them on. So the data. Assessments. We always assess spelling over reading, and spelling is 100% more accessible for our students than actually reading, because we know that our students don't always have great oral language. And spelling allows us to get really good data from where they're sitting, how their phonics is growing when we use this their spelling assessment, Little Learner Spelling Assessment. If anyone's seen it, it has the green boxes to say they've consolidated it, yellow to say that they're still going, and then red to say that they don't know it. And we've seen clear gap, like we've seen clear greens appear when we've taught the different stages. So it has been very reliable for us. Spelling is sometimes easier also to assess, because for students with disabilities, they have deficits in phonological awareness. And we can actually bypass those deficits in phonological awareness, which is your rhyming. We don't teach rhyming or syllables or any of those early phonological awareness skills, because we've managed to bypass it through just teaching spelling. There's actually 2 systems in the brain, and this book, it's in here, and I can't say his lovely name, but he says that we have a letterbox system, and the letterbox system is where of our spelling, and we can actually teach students learn to read through accessing that letterbox system. So we've managed to have students reading higher where their spelling is now, just from teaching the spelling and just assessing spelling. We don't do reading tests. We don't do any, the teachers will ask me, oh, how do we know what level of reading? And I just say to them, well, hear them read. Like we've all been trained that we can kind of identify, if we're hearing them read, whether they know it or not. And so that's how we do our reading now. We don't make our students do reading assessments. Although, because we are so far, some of our students are actually getting Dibbles tested at the moment, and some of our students are getting cubes tested. But this is, what is it, 4 years, 2022, 23, 24, 24, that's 3.5 years. 3.5 years into the journey that we're actually now looking at reading assessments. So it takes a while. None of this has been quick. This has been a really long process. We also assess writing over reading. And so we have writing assessments every term, and that's on our mentor text, which is I guess where we focus on the upper strand of the reading rope is through our mentor text, and that's a real heavy language-based program. So, and we use colourful semantics for that writing as well. And we also, observation is really, really key, taking photos of their work. We do a lot of things on the whiteboard, so there's a lot of photos taken of their work. Workbooks we found we only really mainly use when the students have it wrote out, like have written it on the whiteboard. A lot of our students stress out when it comes to workbooks, especially if they've been in mainstream schools and haven't been successful. They feel like they've failed when they see any workbooks. The students that are with us from the start, they're used to it, but some of our students take a long time for us to be able to move them into workbooks because of that fear of getting it wrong. We do assessments every term, at the end of every term. So this week and last week they would have completed the phonics assessment from little learners, and they would have been doing their writing assessment. So we have moderation in the last week of term to look at where the students' writing is and where the students' spelling is. And if groups have to change, so we will change students around depending on what their scores were for spelling. So students might change their groups, teachers might change their groups, and we actually have some Sounds Right trained ES running groups as well. So they might change. Our teachers really love the fact that they might work with different kids across the year, and some of our teachers really love the fact that there's different kids in their groups in the morning than what they have for their homeroom the whole time. So we've also had a lot of collaboration with teachers because teachers are helping each other out if they have to swap different phonics groups. So it is very much mostly a whole school system, and that's how it has become so successful. So there's a couple of barriers that we had at the start. I guess being in special education for a while, we haven't always done this well. We were teaching explicitly years ago, and then we moved into that, I guess, like the DE, we moved into this more constructivist model, and now we're trying to claim the explicit teaching space back. But, what we've seen is that some of our students can't learn, and now it's very much our students can learn, we just need to teach them the right way. We had some teachers say it was really boring when they started doing the phonics because they were doing the same thing every week, and now they love it because it's not a lot of planning. So their planning for the week is really lowered, and that's been a benefit of moving into structured literacy, is that we've actually decreased a lot of their planning for teachers. We're not using oral reading assessments, and I recommend that if you have students with low oral ability, then we don't use oral reading assessments. It just sets them up to fail. In terms of assessments for students who have physical disabilities, eye gaze, I've worked with a school where you can use eye gaze, and they can, if you're doing the spelling assessment, they can eye gaze the sounds, and and an aide or a teacher can write it down and scribe for them. If you are using an eye gaze machine to teach phonics, I'd recommend that you set it up so that if the letters are there, that the sound is behind it at the very start, and that helps. And then the teachers have to blend it. The devices out there aren't great. Like, I mean, they're great, but they're not great for this. And so far, there hasn't been an app developer who's worked out how to blend. And until that point, we still have to blend, but that doesn't mean that we don't do it, because we have to do that blending. Our teachers are blending all the time, even for all students. So the blending part is really important for all students, but I've heard some people say, but they can't. And I'm like, well, we just have to be a bit more clever about the way we think about it. Sometimes we can get caught up in that it has to be done this way, but we've done it a few different ways and it still worked. Resourcing is a big barrier. Little Learners now has a subscription service, so I've recommended that schools get that because everything's on there, and it was really costly to set it up for us, but now there's these options. The students do need decodables to practice, and that's the biggest thing, is that they have to be practicing. Every day our students read decodables in their room, and we have those reading books that the teachers tick off to say that they've read for the day, but they're doing reading all the time. I recommend 5 books for the week, and then you do those 5 books for 5 weeks to build the fluency in as well. If you have a lack of games, for those students who need that little bit of motivation at the end, get some games in place, some phonic games in place. And no program has everything. And this is why we have stolen from a lot of different things to create this program. and found out over time using data what works. So that's it from me. I'm not sure what the time is. But yes, I'm hoping that was okay.
That was more than okay. Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. What a fantastic talk, and just so practical. I think that there's such a hunger for the how, and you've delivered that in spades. Yeah, I think someone said earlier, I want to be Charlotte when I grow up, and someone else just said, I'd love to work there. So
Yeah,
I
come
think
work for us.
yeah. I think listening to you, people feel like they probably got a masterclass in how you do things, and hopefully can take some things away to their settings. Something you mentioned that sort of, I suppose, stood out to me was just the idea of how growth happens in your school. And I think it's a common story for all of our kids. There is a right way to teach reading and spelling. There's a really effective way to teach reading and spelling, but the pace at which we grow is different for all of us, right? And it's about sitting in that space and understanding that growth is often an S curve rather than a line. So it's wonderful to hear that, and wonderful that you have a
And
space in your school to sort of, honor that for all your kids. We do have some
I just
questions.
didn't, can I just
Yep.
add something?
Yeah, please
I
do.
didn't talk about IQ in this. And so I forgot, I didn't put on there that IQ for some people think is a barrier, but our students are all under 70 IQ, and some of them would qualify for SDS schools in Victoria, and some of them would qualify for special schools in Victoria. So we have the whole range from unaccessible to 70. And I can tell you, hand on heart, that there is no pattern to it. Like we have students that might be sitting near the 70s that have made less progress than students that might be in that SDS space. And when I was talking before about not knowing how the brain was set up, it really is the case that we actually don't know. And by doing this, that's what we've seen, is that there is no pattern to it. There is no rhyme or reason to it. There is nothing that we have been able to identify as a precursor. And I think the thing is that we just have to teach it. And no matter where the kid's at, we just have to teach it, because you can't tick a box, and there's no checklist. And that's what we've seen over these years is it's random. Like we know we're teaching and it's completely random.
No, I love to hear that. And I'm sure it's very validating for people to hear who are here wondering on the journey themselves. We have some questions. So do you have a minute to take a few questions, Charlotte?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So one from Victoria, which got a bit of love on the emojis, was, could you please break down what you would do in your 45-minute lesson block?
Okay, so it was, I'll go back to that slide. I'll go back to it. It's probably a quicker way. This is what we do. These.
Oh, yeah.
So if people email me, I send them out. Yeah. So you can email me and I'll send out things. We're very sharey school. We share everything. Anyone emails, I send things out to them. But this is pretty much it. So this is the tune in, and this is your must do. So we have to do the daily review of all sounds in the stages. We review what we did last session. We do a sound swap lesson or sounds right lessons 1, 2, 3, or 4. We use dictation strips, and we do the handwriting of the target sounds. Dictation at this lower level might only be, from one of the books, and you don't need dictation strips to do it. You can just use the decodable readers themselves. So it might be Sam Sat, and that might be your dictation. But it just gives the students that cognitive thinking time that they actually have to do it for themselves, because our lessons are so highly scaffolded that they actually have to apply all of that knowledge. And so we don't hammer that too hard at those lower levels. Like we would only do maybe 1 or 2 of those sentences, but it just gets them using it in real life and using it where they think that they can use it. And a lot of this is about them thinking they can do it, so then they do more. So that dictation at that level is really, really low. But that's it. There's not much you need to do. And I think we've complicated it really a lot in schools. I think schools have become sometimes too complicated in this space, whereas there's not many sessions. But that's it, really.
Cool. And there's a few questions about just getting a copy of the slides and these resources. So what I could do as well is put them in the little blog post we put together at the end, and have it as a link, as well as people reaching out to you, Charlotte. So I'll just drop the So if people have joined late as well, you can sign up to the newsletter on that little link I dropped in. There was a question, I couldn't catch the name, but about what mentor text you use at your school or in your classes.
Oh, so we use different mentor texts across the school. So that's also a big structured program. I haven't spoke about that yet. Nobody's asked me to speak about our mentor text thing. Phonics is like the big thing at the moment. But that's even a structured program where we have like maybe F to 2 do certain books, and then we teach it for a term. So all the books that we teach for a term. And at the moment, our secondary kids, our junior secondary kids are doing the Silver Donkey. I think it's like 3, 4, 5, 6s are doing Off We Go Around Australia. Maybe the grade 2, 3s are doing the Gruffalo. And then we have the foundation, like prep 1 kids doing Very Hungry Caterpillar. So it's a bit, our classes are all mixed across the school, age grouped. So we do a whole book for a term, and that's to build the oral language. We do the sentence structure. So we start with simple sentence structures and we build them up, and we do that to build the background knowledge. And I create templates that have questioning in it, your syntax structure, your themes that you have to address, and also all the vocabulary in it. And then I make up slideshows sometimes around all those things. So our mentor text is very, I guess, like this program. It's got a lot of components to it and a lot of must do's and then a bit of fun. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll have to get you back for a masterclass in mentor text. That sounds fantastic. A question from Joanna is, any last minute advice for helping non-verbal/low verbal students?
Use the visuals. So this is the game changer. We have seen, where is it? We have seen some students who can haven't been able to sound out sounds, but because I call it speech pathology on crack, because we're getting the students to sound out sounds all the time. So even if they can't, we still ask them to attempt it. And we have students who are really low oral, non-speaking, who in these sessions will speak and they say the sounds and they say the words when they're sounding it out, but they don't speak any other time. And then we actually have had students improve their language because we're giving them this all the time and we're asking them to say it. And then the visuals allow us to do it without the sound. And you have to have visuals. Like if you're working with kids with disability, visuals are your saving grace, and you can never have too many visuals. Everything we put is visual. And this is it. You have to have it. If you are doing a program without visuals, then the kids aren't going to be able to to access it, number one, or show that they're learning. So that's why we do spelling, is so we can use the visuals. So they put the visuals together, and then even if they can't say it, we know that they're using the code that they have learnt.
Brilliant, thanks. Feel free, we've got a few more minutes, so if people want to drop questions into the chat, feel free. There was some questions around, I know you covered a little bit around reading assessments, and someone did ask if you use Dibbles. So it sounds like you're starting to use some Dibbles as part of your educational stack, so to speak. So I'd love to maybe hear a little bit about that.
So we've just intervention teacher, she's doing it now. I was planning on doing it, but I don't have time. She's just started the assessment. So we've put it off for a long time because we don't want the students to fail it, and we don't want the students to feel like they can't access it because it's very heavy. It's a very big assessment. And if you are giving it to students too early, it's that failure where they feel like they're failing even before they've even started. And so we've held off for a very long time. And mainly it's our curiosity. We're not going to use it as a massive assessment. It's mainly our curiosity to see where students are at age grade wise, I guess. And it's not coming from a place of we're going to say this many students are graded. Like that is going to be completely in-house for us. Like we put those pie charts, but that is complete in-house knowledge, I guess, of just saying Oh, that's interesting where students are at. So it is, I know it's being heavily pushed at the moment, and people want to know where grades are and where kids are, but I don't recommend that unless students are ready for it. And, through this whole process, we've reduced so much testing anxiety that when we do actually test our students now, after 2 or 3 years or 3 years of doing this, that our students they just do it without any stress because they're so used to these low stakes testing for them. And then we're like some of our students, I want to just check their comprehension. So we're going to use cubed at that grade 3 level.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you. It's great to hear a different way of using those assessments. Yeah, sort of for internal knowledge, not necessarily just for like everyone. There was a question from Sophie around any ideas to support the concept of blending at the early stages.
Oh, it's practice. It is. We're doing a lot of it. Like if you came out, we take lots of schools visit us as well. And when they see how heavily scaffolded it is, they understand that we're doing a lot of that heavy lifting in the early stages where we'll have a word up. So we'll show like, one of our teachers shows the word and then puts it down, and then she'll say, I don't know, jug. Is there a G in there? Yeah, jug. She'll say jug, and then so some kids, you see the ones that know it straight away because they're already off the mark and they're pulling the sounds down. And as soon as they see jug, they're like jug. And then the other students are waiting for her to say jug. And then they'll pull it down. And then we have the other students because in a stage, they're all at different levels as well. And so we're picking up every student as the teacher's saying it. And then in the end, the word comes up, and so the students correct themselves. They can correct themselves. The teachers can correct them. But for some students, it is only at when the word pops up that they actually write it. And because it's so heavily scaffolded, and because we don't always start, like some students might be nearly at the end of that stage of that consolidation, and some students are coming in. We scaffold all steps, but we have found the ones that know it, they are straight into it. They're not even waiting. And I think we get scared about scaffolding because we think that those students that know it are going to get lazy, but they don't. They're like bang, 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 and they're like finished, and they're just waiting for the word to pop up so they can correct. And we're scaffolding a lot of blending. We are doing the blending. We are showing them the blending. We are stretching out the word to blend. And we at those early stages, it is know the sounds, that first 8 sounds by heart, and then we teach them to blend. So we're not doing 3 or 4 things at the same time. We're just saying once you know these 8 sounds, it will. Most of our preps sit in stage 1 for the year because we just want to get that blending happening. We want to get that manipulation happening, and we want to get the segmenting happening, and we don't move them out unless they've really flown. So it's very long. It is the longest and hardest process for our kids. So we do a lot of it in front of them to show them.
Brilliant. I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll let you go. I'm sure you're ready for bed after your big camp and presenting tonight. But this one's from Ben. When learning the initial sounds of each letter, how do you ensure that the memory retention stays with students? I was trying to teach sounds to students using the multi-lit program. I've just lost the question. A multi-lit program where students would learn the sounds of the letters, but the following day they would forget it.
Repetition, repetition, repetition. The mnemonics. So our students are preps who've just been exposed to it this year. They have already got Milo Monkey and Cooper Caterpillar. Like they already know the names of those characters that start with the M, and they're starting to do Milo Monkey, Milo Monkey, And so that's why I recommend this program, because mnemonics actually has a lot of research evidence behind it. It is incredibly research based, and a lot of programs have left that off because they've thought for students that probably understand it really quickly, whereas our students need so much of that mnemonics, and that's what's helped them. So if we're actually testing, this is the first time we're testing preps just to see how many of those first sounds they know and whether they know it through the the character or whether they actually know it. And so I don't know. Stay tuned because we might have some information around that. But this is the first time we're actually checking, the mnemonics. But mnemonics isn't harmful. So if they're learning it through the character, through the sound, and that transfers into them knowing it. And we've seen that time and time again. Most of our preps, if they are in pre-phonic, when they come to us straight away, we've only got, I think, one grade one sitting in pre-phonics at the moment. Most of them scaffold out quite quickly with that mnemonic support.
Brilliant. Oh, well, look, Charlotte, thank you. There's some more questions going through. Maybe maybe you can hit up Charlotte via email or on LinkedIn, I think, because it is sort of getting to time. But look, thank you so much for the amazing talk, and thank you so much for all the work you're doing to sort of, support our young people, and our educators working in the special education space, but also more broadly, I think the things you talk about, Charlotte, can be taken into any school. We know we've got young people with disabilities across our schools, and they all deserve the kind of high quality instruction that you're sort of promoting and supporting. So thank you again for speaking tonight. Would love to have you back at some point in the future, but enjoy your rest and enjoy the rest of the time, your term, and everybody else. I hope you have a wonderful term as well. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event. But for now, thank you, Charlotte, and take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
All right,
Thank
see you
you.
later. Bye.
See ya.
I will end the call. Bye-bye.
See ya.